have several sample slides from the poetry project that you are working on. And I just wanted to go over some high points, maybe point out some mistakes or things that you should add as you work on this assignment. So definitely have a creative original title that includes the name of the poet. Of course, use MLA format guidelines for this heading on this first slide as well. Remember, you're uploading this for your classmates as well as for a grade from me. So you want to look at each other's work and let that help you prepare for the midterm and possibly final exam. All right, the poet is a person. You'll want to, you can use this basic template actually for all the slides. Not exactly. Obviously, you have to put your own thinking and apply the things that are asked for given the title of each slide. You have to apply those ideas to the content. But this little template gives you some idea of what I expect for content for each slide. So I expect a main idea sentence on each slide. Don't start right out quoting something. Obviously, you will give the poet's name just to clarify. Make sure that you don't overuse pronouns. Sometimes there can be ambiguous pronoun references. So if you're in doubt as to whether or not the pronoun you're using makes complete sense, you might just err on the side of using more nouns in your writing. You definitely want to give some background and context for each slide. Tell me what the poet is doing or thinking around the time they are writing in regards to politics or life in general, things they have to teach, things they have to say, their personal philosophy or religion, those sorts of things. Give a quotation, at least one, from a poem the person has written so that we can see evidence for that idea or those ideas that you are claiming your poet has. So we want to see those things reflected in the poet's work. Now, it's also good to use quotations or paraphrases from outside sources, but you have a lot of information in your textbook in the biographical parts. So when you do your bibliography, make sure that the biographical parts look different than the actual poems. For example, if I am quoting from To a Waterfowl by William Cullen Bryant, that's going to be different than if I'm quoting from the biographical information on William Cullen Bryant, because Bryant did not write his own biographical information. The editors of the textbook did. So make sure you're doing the correct types of works cited there. You also have the option of either quoting directly from your biographical information you use to help establish the points you're making, which you can do before you quote lines of poetry or after. Do what works well with the flow of your writing. But you are allowed to paraphrase in this one. Now, for the major paper that you do at the end of the semester, I want direct quotations every time. So just be ready for that. And never end a paragraph or a slide with a quotation. There is always more to say. You need to always explain the main things that were important in the quotation. in your own words. Your voice should be the prominent one, you and the poet, really, but not the people you research necessarily. So without plagiarizing, add your ideas about why you think the poet is uh, a philosopher in this particular way, or whatever your slide happens to be. Maybe why their politics are what they are. This research paper takes a bit of inference from you. You have to know what was going on in America at the time to write intelligently about how the poetry the person is writing connects to their life and their community. I would also like to see you connect the lines of the poem in each slide more universally, if that's at all possible, and it should be. We study poetry that's this old because it still gives us some connection universally to what we understand about our history and about ourselves even. All the best literature holds a mirror up to its own community in its own time, but also lasts, and its endurance comes from that universal truth that it seems to speak, that still speaks to us in our current time. Let's make those connections as well. And about ending with your own words, it's better to explain something too much than not enough. I've probably said that before. But in your explanations, use some of the key words or phrases that you've quoted. That's a really helpful tool for making sure that you're not just quoting something because it seems relevant to the overall topic you're writing about, but you're quoting something that you're really truly going to interact with in your own words. It really demonstrates your level of critical thinking in finding good things to quote or to mention if you're paraphrasing, and then being able to be in discussion with the historian or expert or poet himself or herself. Here is a very long section. Now, I could have made this more than one page. So, for example, when we look at this one is more spread out. The next one is about William Cullen Bryant. And I wanted to use a big long blocked quotation, so make sure that you review the things that are different about blocked quotations than standard quotations. Quoting lines of poetry, 3 or more lines must be in block format. Notice there are no quotation marks for a blocked quotation, and notice that the period at the end of the quotation stays with the content, does not go after the parenthetical citation. But when you're quoting fewer than 4 lines of poetry, 3, 2, 1, it just stays with the rest of the writing that you already have going, so it doesn't get blocked. If you are quoting 2 or 3 lines of poetry, you put a / to show the line breaks. You do have quotation marks, and you leave that period that may have gone here. Wait until after the parenthetical citation to include the period. So 2 ways of doing that. Now, I continued this writing on William Cullen Bryant on a second page. So just make sure that you are aware that that's a possibility. Here is how you would cite a video or an audio recording if you are using that as a source. Use the timestamp in your parenthetical citation. This last one is a bit of paraphrasing. I just paraphrased. Basically, I found a chart on the age or the life expectancy, so I paraphrased that. Again, this one's really long, so I probably could have just put that on more than one page. That would have been fine. But as long as your font is at least 12 points, like it would be for a standard essay, hopefully I'll be able to see it. Don't make it so small I can't read it. And do your best with the formatting. I know it can be tricky to get the formatting exactly right. Using this slide, I can really show you a blocked quotation that is has some quotation marks in it, but the whole quotation itself I took from this source. When you are using a blocked quotation, generally you introduce the quotation with a complete sentence followed by a colon, not a period, a colon. So notice the colon. And then no quotation marks at the beginning or the end. If you have quotation marks that are already in there, you leave those within the quotation. If you have a quotation within a quotation, for example, this one starts quotation marks here and then there was a section that already had quotation marks around it. So if you encounter that, then you change the inside quotation marks to single quotation marks for a quote within a quote. So the standard quotation marks are to represent the section that I'm quoting from the source. Also, for a blocked quotation, back to this section, don't start a new paragraph right after the blocked quotation because, as I said before, you don't want to end a paragraph with a quotation. So you don't indent this part after the blocked quotation. You just continue writing. What else? Let's see. Here's another blocked quotation we have because I have quoted more than 3 lines. Here I've only quoted 2 lines, so you can see the differences there. What else? What else? Here's a little bit on Walt Whitman. What do we have? Make sure you know the difference in which sources you should italicize their titles and which ones should go in quotation marks. So titles of poems go in quotation marks. Titles of articles go in quotation marks. Titles of short stories go in quotation marks. Titles of books, like this one, go in italics. Titles of websites, like this one, go in italics. So think of the larger things, the titles of those large things like websites that might contain web pages or articles. Those articles or web page titles would be in quotation marks, but the title of the website, the bigger thing called the container, that title goes in italics. So let's look at the bibliography. And again, I'm calling it a bibliography because I'm not requiring that you directly quote every outside source you use. You're required to directly quote the poem or a poem on each slide, and more than one would be great. But I welcome you to directly quote these sources as well if you are using extra outside sources. Do make sure they are in alphabetical order. Do your best to achieve that hanging indent. The way I did that was to come over here to paragraph options. It's not giving it to me now, of course. So may have to play with your works cited. Don't overly stress out about the indentations. For a PowerPoint, it can be really tricky, so I don't want to stress anybody out too much over that sort of formatting thing. My trick for doing a hanging indent generally, or formatting things correctly for if I have a lot of written text in a PowerPoint, I just go ahead and format it in a standard Word document and then copy and paste it into a slide. That helps me a lot. I did want the whole project though in a PowerPoint because I like seeing your illustrations, your pictures of your poets and how you illustrate the particular theme of each slide to correspond with the writing of the poet. So I'm really looking forward to your projects. I hope you learn a lot. Let me know if you have any questions.